What's up, everybody? Welcome back into the Play the Fights on College Football show. Another off-season episode is upon us, and tonight it's a little lighter in the studio. No Jake. He is traveling for some personal or work-related things. I can't even remember, but he is with us in spirit. We miss you, Jake, and we'll see you next week. The new intro video means it is a full transfer into the 2025 season as rainy April is coming to an end. Springtime May's coming. The weather's going to turn around. Next thing you know, it'll be football season, end of August. JP, how we doing tonight? Ready to talk on the Big Ten.
Pumped to talk to Big Ten. I feel like we have talked certain teams in the Big Ten quite a bit. We haven't touched on some other pieces of the conference. Only in its second year after realignment, so there's a lot of storylines to touch on. I will say nobody says it better than Justin Timberlake. It's going to be May tomorrow.
I saw that. I saw it's a good one. I also was, if people don't have you on Snapchat, which majority of listeners probably don't. We never got a Mountain review.
I got it in the fridge. I got it in the fridge.
Still haven't opened it. I mean, JP's a big Mountain Dew review guy. For all of you who don't know, I mean, I gotta get my hands on that review. I gotta know. The people are waiting.
This one's been built up a little bit. I think mostly by you saying it's pretty Livewire-ish. Livewire being one of my favorite Mountain Dew flavors. But I got it sitting in the fridge. It's ready to happen tonight, so don't worry about it. It'll get done. Excited for it. Zero sugar is what I got, so we're gonna rock with that.
Got to go zero sugar on the soda. I mean, no calories, you don't want to drink your calories. Drink your sugar intake via soda. So, but I'm a big pop guy, whatever you call it, wherever you are.
Big pop guy.
We appreciate you joining us. If you are your first time listener, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. If you love the sport of college football, we are still on the road to 1,000 on YouTube. Get us there. Head on over to the YouTube channel, hit the subscribe button. It's college football all the time. Nothing else matters, especially in the Midwest, where we are a part of a rainy last day of April style day today. And we are here to talk college football, including the Big Ten. But before we do that, we want to remind you to like that video, subscribe, shop No Rivals, our great sponsor over at No Rivals, shopnorivals.com. Use the code PTFS on checkout for free shipping on all of your premium collegiate headwear. Some awesome new designs out there, some retro, some glory, some vintage designs dropping, new teams being added. We talked last week. They put out a Colorado State hat, Ag Day, with the orange and the green. Might be one of the better ones they've ever put out.
It's up there. I'd give it top 3 status without really thinking about the other two. I would guarantee a top 3 in the podium, and I would see every argument for it being number 1 of all time.
Yeah, it's definitely one to check out. Check it out at shopnorivals.com. And when you pick a hat you love, if you don't see your team, request a team under the teams tab. But pick a hat you love and use the code PTFS. We will cover shipping for you. Shout out to the team at No Rivals. Awesome people over there. Second ad, shameless plug ourselves. Another week, another opportunity for you to get your 3 sticker pack. Got the logo, the name, and then the all-important, if you watch this show, you are an official ball knower. So get your ball knower sticker live through our DMs right now on Instagram, on X. They're all open. Shoot us a message. $10 is it. No shipping costs, $10 flat, Venmo, Zelle, whatever you got, we'll accept. And we appreciate your support. It all goes back to making the show happen. So get those today on all of our social media channels, and we love you if you do it. All right, with that, let's go into tonight's show. Let's start off with the question of the day. People have been loving this. This one's fun. JP made this one up, so I'll let him answer first before I go. What is your game day morning routine before an 11 a.m. kick on a fall Saturday and college football's on deck?
Yeah, I'm going to go and act like I'm not going to Iowa City. I'm staying at home. Iowa's on the road. And there's a good slate of football. I am one of those that likes to get up and get things done early. So maybe that's a 7 rise when I usually get up during the work week, 7:30, somewhere around there. Maybe we're getting the dog out and walking him a mile or two. Come back. I got to make sure I got some fuel in the system of some sort. So I'm thinking maybe I go to get a coffee, maybe I got a Celsius or, some form of energy drink laying around. If the significant other is around, it's usually coffee based on her preference. And it's, it's not a bad thing to get up and drive around a little bit, bring the dog a pup cup, whatnot. Do that, come back, and then make a breakfast. I like to do some breakfast burritos or breakfast tacos, something gets settled down, not in a real rush to get sat down for game day or big noon kickoff. I like the shows. They're usually background noise though, as I get other things done throughout the day in the morning. And then I am sat ready at 10:30 for things to start. That's the ending of all those pregame shows. We know the pregame shows tend to run a little past 11 Central. Those go into like 11
every time,
11:20 almost at this point. And then I am sat with a 2 or 3 TVs set up ready to watch games. So it's a pretty simple routine, but it needs to happen in that order, because if we get off and kickoff has happened and I'm still getting coffee, or I haven't taken the dog out, or I haven't, gotten my food set on a plate ready to watch, I feel a little off, and then I feel rushed. It just feels like things aren't flowing quite correctly. So, there's increments in between kickoffs of the 11, 2:30, 6:30 games, and those kind of change depending on the day. But that morning has to be pretty stacked up all in a row sequentially to keep things moving in the right direction. It's simple,
yeah.
but effective.
It's simple, but it's very thought out. You have a lot of detail into what you're eating, making sure you get it in time, sit down at the right time, have the TV set up on the correct channels for what 11 a.m. games you got to dial into.
Otherwise, you're panicking. You're like, what? I thought they were on ESPN. No, they're on Fox. I thought they were on Fox. No, they're actually just ESPN Plus. Now you're scrambling. It's too late.
And the real ball knowers got the ESPN Plus on like the phone or tablet on the side for a little Memphis, North Texas, some just greasy little game you got the over on or something like that. I like that routine. I had to put a lot of thought into this because as a season ticket guy for Nebraska, the first 5 weeks last year we played at home. So it was very bam, 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 bam. And you can say you love college football as much as us, where we sit down and talk about it all year long. But it eventually kind of stacks up. Like that process of getting up, getting out of the house, your hour-long drive with traffic all coming from a city of 1 million people like I am, going down to Lincoln, and then getting the tailgate set up, getting the food the night before, whatever cookie tray. So there's a lot of thought that goes into the game. So when the first road game ever arrives, which we get to not really start with it this year, but kind of if you're not going to the game in Arrowhead, it's kind of a nice relief to then have this plan thought out to where I get up, no alarm. This is my first year with the dog, as you can see, that she will probably have me up earlier than normal on Saturday mornings. So I'll have to dive into my routine more, but I have to get a coffee. That is one must. I'm with your significant other, JP. I have to have my coffee on Saturday morning. The dog's really getting greedy and has to have her pup cup. Otherwise, she's not very nice to us that day. And then I kind of settle in. I may not have food, may eat during the first game, skip breakfast, eat a little lunch at half or after the first quarter of those first games. But I really think the process is very dedicated to having the television in the right spot, having the correct game. But like starting before I get to the channels, I really, it depends on the time of year. First couple of weeks, you're probably keeping the windows shut. It's a little warm. But when you get to that mid-October, that first week of October, that little window crack in the morning, or just stepping outside with your coffee and that cold breeze hits you with unfortunately for the last time we're going to hear Lee Corso, but Lee Corso yapping in the background, or Reese Davis. Yes, she's a puppy. Got a little scratch here from her. It's a pity mix that we rescued. So she's got a little pit bull in her. We got to trim the nails. That's on me. Hands up. Hey, I can't really discredit her. It was during playing, not out of spite, Jay Bird. So good question there. It's not my wife. She doesn't do this to me. Worth mentioning.
He didn't burn dinner.
Yes, I did not. No, she just made a dinner. It's absolutely outstanding. There you go. Shout out her. But yeah, very important routine. Let us know your routine in the comments. What do you do? What is one must have for your game day experience come college football season? If you had to knock one thing down, JP, one thing that is required for your game day experience outside of the game starting, what is it? Is it your coffee? Is it your breakfast? What do you got?
I gotta have some kind of fuel. Otherwise, I'm going a good breakfast. And it doesn't need, I don't say like good breakfast, like it doesn't need to be like super healthy, but it needs to be enough. It just can't be like a random grease.
Yeah, like
I'm like it's got to last, because otherwise I'll just nitpick and snack throughout the day. And then I'll just, you're never really hungry if you're just snacking the whole day. And then at some point you're going to eat a meal and it's just too much. But I love the breakfast burritos I kind of prep up, or I call it like a poor man's eggs Benedict. There's no real hollandaise sauce on it, but it's like your Canadian bacon or ham and eggs, English muffins, stuff like that, little hot sauce, little cheese. It's basically an open face sandwich or breakfast sandwich. So yeah, I'd say I have to have that. Like that also, like that routine of cooking and having the show on in the background is kind of like serenity. It's just there, you know. It's just that you're sitting in this little moment enjoying it. And if you got the window crack like you're talking about, maybe you're outside on the grill doing this, you know.
Yeah, little breakfast burrito on the Blackstone. That could be the
don't get
difference
us crazy.
in the day.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm getting fired up talking about this. That's one thing. I guess they always talk about advertising or marketing. Nostalgia is always a big play. I think it's that nostalgic feeling of you love the sport for so long that when you can feel that cold breeze with College Game Day on the background, the smell of bacon, maybe your mom's cooking, it's just that feeling of like, oh yeah, it's the best time of year right now. It's like I'm about to watch just two teams that maybe I don't even give a shit about just go to war, and I'm going to be eating. It's just the best. I mean, I love it so much, and that's why we do this show. So we appreciate you tuning in. Great question of the day there. Let's go into recent news. Recent news is a little lighter this week. We're going to talk in depth about a great G5 program that we cover all throughout the season. Boise State extends head coach Spencer Danielson. If you remember, Danielson stepped in as the interim there. Now he gets extended. He was only making about $1.5 million a year there. And I say only as if he was squeaking by in Boise, Idaho, but he gets a nice extension here. 5 years, $11 million, around $2.2 million a year. So like a $600,000 raise for our boy who took the Broncos to the Mountain West Championship and the college football playoff last year. Do you like this move? Was it well-deserved?
Yeah, you know, you look at what Boise State's done coaching-wise, and Chris Peterson's the big one that comes up that was kind of swiped away from Boise State. Right. But you kind of have to pay to keep guys around, especially if you continue to have this success throughout the Mountain West, which is probably outside of the American, the premier conference within the G5. And then if you kind of look at what Boise State's done, it's continued to retain players for the most part. Guys aren't leaving, like their studs aren't really leaving. They've also really done a great job recruiting and taking guys in that have really fit the scheme. And you have to pay for that kind of thing. And so the extension is well worth it. You know, it's obviously earned. I think it's a step in the right path to keep a guy there that they really believe in, and a culture really going that through like 4 or 5 coaches, man. Like Boise State's continued to do it. Anytime that team's not in the Mountain West title, there's more question marks than than anything else. Like it's like, what happened? Like what's going on? And so it's really cool to see guys get paid and schools believe in their coaches, and smaller schools retain coaches that we think are worth the money.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to follow this move because I think last year, obviously, you get a little bit of a loaded deck with Ashton Jeanty, right? Like he helps you win a lot of those football games. But now coming into this season, we really get to see Danielson's ability to recruit to a smaller school, really have to take advantage of what Boise State has built themselves up to be over the last 10 years and take that G5 head like they always do. And can he recruit from high school kids? Can he develop? Like that process really starts now, because if I asked a majority of college football fans right now, I do not think they would be able to name me 3 to 5 Boise State athletes. Granted, we would be able to, but that's because we're sick puppies. So I think we'll really find out a lot about Danielson this year and how he transfers over in that offense, the difference in play calling, all that good stuff on the field very soon. But I like the move. It well earned. I mean, you make the college football playoff, you get the first round bye. They competed, I thought, decently well. Jeanty had a little bit of a slip up in that game, but they were still competitive and they deserve to be there. So we'll see how Boise State goes in the future with a nice move and extension for their head coach this week. All right. Next point and last point of recent news actually was just kind of a controversial thought I had was UCLA fully acquires Nico Maliava from Tennessee. He's in. They bring in his little brother. We talked about this all last week, this move. Their win total did not move. It still sits at 5.5, and the over on that 5.5. So if you think they're going to get to 6 wins, Vegas doesn't agree with you. It's plus money here. So what do you think on this, JP? Should it have moved? Do you really expect UCLA to get 1 or 2 more games? I mean, I think the majority and the general consumer probably did, but Vegas doesn't think so. Do you agree or disagree?
You know, I dove into the schedule just because I feel like this early in the year, a lot of it's schedule based on what people are thinking. Rosters aren't quite set. They're getting to that point where they are set. You can kind of dive into a team a little bit more personnel wise. But schedule wise, they get home games against Utah, Penn State, Maryland, Nebraska, Washington. I would consider, if I'm being completely honest, all of those coin flips. I'd lean loss to Penn State. Right now, I'd lean loss to Nebraska, and Utah, Washington, I'd call coin flips at this point in time. We're not really sure what Utah will be quite yet. We know they brought in talent. And Washington is another one where you're kind of learning about them. Away at Michigan State, Indiana, Ohio State, USC. I would say Ohio State's a sure loss. I think Indiana's definitely a better team on the road. I don't think UCLA gets them. USC, kind of coin flippy, just being a rivalry. It's not really a road game, but I mean, I'm going to call it a road game when it's a rivalry setting. And then Michigan State is a question mark too, a toss-up. So there's a lot of toss-ups here, but like 60-40 toss-ups. Like I don't expect UCLA to be favored against Nebraska. That we call that a coin flip. Utah is pushing it. I think Utah is a better team. I'd be surprised if they were favored against Michigan State on the road. They won't be favored against Indiana. They won't be favored against USC. They won't be favored against Ohio State. So I do kind of sit there and think where's the 6th or 7th win, right? Especially we're not even mentioning a road game against UNLV early, and that's a revamped UNLV team, but it's not a gimme. Like if UNLV is anything like they have been in the last couple of years, even if it's a couple steps back, who is UCLA? Lots of letters in these words we're talking here.
West Coast.
Yeah, it's not a gimme. So to say he's worth what people probably would think in a half game, a whole game worth in your line. I'm not really 100% sure on that because I'm still really skeptical of the entire supporting cast, offensive or defensive, for him.
Yeah, and that's a fair place to put it. I think when I thought of this offense with his acquisition, I think a part of UCLA being the team that goes out and gets him, and granted, they're trying to replace a guy with a lot of college football experience in Ethan Garber, who was better than people expected him to be last year. I mean, he got both of our teams. He got Nebraska. He got Iowa. So they had a couple of surprising wins that nobody really expected. And I don't want to say, discredit to Deshaun Foster because everybody kind of wrote him off after the Big Ten Media Days scandal last year, or incident, I should say. I just don't know what the conversations were to get Nico in UCLA's door offensively that's going to be different because they were really back heavy last year, either running the football or getting those backs out in space via the screen game. And that was really where they found a lot of their success against good teams.
Absolutely.
So does Nico want to sling it? Does he want to run it more? I'm sure a part of that conversation was we want to throw the ball downfield more in Tennessee. I mean, you saw it last year with Heupel telling Nico after the Oklahoma game, hey, we really shut it down there. Like maybe that was a part of the problem that nobody brought up. So we'll see how different the offense looks. I mean, he's got talent, but he's also had some inconsistency issues in the SEC. We'll see maybe on the lower stage where UCLA is not expected to be this team of great measure like Tennessee always expects to be if he can flourish. So it's definitely an interesting storyline to follow. I think if I would take it, I think 6 is on there, right? With all the toss-ups, you got to feel decent throwing your money on a bowl eligibility season at plus money, right? Like if you would, it would be probably minimum unit play for people.
For sure.
But 6 is not a lot.
Yeah, and looking at their talent last year, like TJ Harden had the most yards as a running back. Garbers had 400 yards on the ground. That's second leading rusher. That's a team that had a Jalen Berger, if you remember, he played in Michigan State in 23. That wasn't a bad back at all. And it's, not bad receiving core. Like J. Michael's third event was in that, and some other pieces. But there are worries. There's no Carson Schweschinger on the defensive side to really lock down a defensive linebacker field. It's just they're a weird fit still in the Big Ten, if we're being completely honest. And I just don't know where to put him still.
Yeah, I think we'll learn more, kind of like the Boise State thing, as the time goes on. Deshaun Foster's ability, I mean, huge ad in the spring portal. We'll see how it fits. But I just wanted to briefly mention UCLA as they're in a lot of talks with the move with Nico this year. Let's move it down to the transfer portal. The transfer portal, window is finally coming to an end. I mean, you still got some names floating around there, and God knows what's going to go on with some tampering and any of these last minute moves, whatever they may be. But we've kind of got a good picture of the big names and where they landed. Craig Hubert, the ESPN staff writer, came out and ranked who won the transfer portal after this window. The 5 rankings go as follows: 5, Miami; 4, Ole Miss; 3, Oregon; 2, LSU. And at the number 1 spot, let's head down to Lubbock and the Red Raiders. He has winning the transfer portal this season. Agree, disagree? Shocker on any of the lists from you?
It's a little different from like what 24/7 has out. But I think a person doing it rather than numbers kind of tells you on how things fit and where they project things to hit within the portal and who they got.
Right.
One thing I'll say, I had 2 notes. I actually took notes on 2 different teams that were in that top 5. I didn't do a lot of talking on Tech because I feel like we've done quite a bit. We kind of understand what their approach was. It was high talent, high dollar value guys. Go get them. They'll play right away. I wrote down notes on LSU because we've talked about LSU a little bit, and especially the defensive side of things for them. Brian Kelly and that team kind of the last 2 years, like, didn't really go get defensive line help. And it was a big need, and they weren't really paying for it. Maybe they were paying for it and just not landing the guys. But 5 of those commits on that team from this window, or just the last 24 to 25 portal cycle, I guess we'll call it. 5 of them are from the defensive line, 3 edge and 2 interior defensive line ones. The 2 jewels of that being Bernard Gooden from USF and Patrick Payton, from Florida State. Those are 2 guys that are really going to make a difference. And they put an emphasis on it. Like, we're going to stop the run. We're going to get after the quarterback, and we're going to go get guys to do that. So they paid to go do that. On the same thing, that is one of the worst secondaries you've seen in the last couple of years. It got a little better last year just by coaching, getting guys in the right spot. And they went out and got 3 more DBs. So it's like, what Brian Kelly needed to do and felt he needed to do. He's very happy. I wouldn't say very happy, but he's happy with where the offense is. To have Nussmeier back, I think, makes a big difference because the guy is legit a cannon for an arm. I think there's a lot of jokes flying around about if you could just control where the gun was aiming the whole time with Nussmeier, you'd have a definite, Heisman contender, a guy in New York. But it's pretty clear and obvious what LSU wanted to do here, and it was get better on the defensive line, and it was get better in the back 7, specifically at the safety position and the DB position, because there are too many talented guys within the SEC on the edge. And then if you get into a playoff situation, we know what Oregon has had the last couple of years at receiver. You know what Ohio State literally always has, Texas, and just kind of look at where things lay, and that for LSU to take the next step, they really got to get better right there. So that's one thing I wrote down. And then Oregon, only 10 commits in this portal class, but go get you guys that are going to help you. 3 offensive line commits, including a 5-star, is Isaiah World. He was in Nevada tackle they brought in. They also brought in 2 other 4-star, a guard and another tackle. They were let's plug and play some guys in the middle, get physical, and continue to be good offense, running the football as well as protecting the quarterback, because they are breaking it into quarterback this year, and that's a big piece. If you can keep them upright, guys get more comfortable within an offense. So something to watch there, as well as Malik Benson, the Florida State wide receiver, is there. I think Oregon is just quietly having a really good class. I don't feel like they were circulating throughout everybody's list. Oh my goodness, you see the class that Oregon just brought in, because if you're not an Oregon fan or really tied into playing them all the time, you're probably not looking at a lot of their offensive line signings oh my goodness, write that one down, write that one down. But yeah, I mean, I really like that class. I think that's plug and play. Dan Lanning just shows that he wants the trenches on the offensive side to get just as good as he's done on the defensive line. And it's high school first, supplement with the portal.
Yeah, Lanning's done a really good job at that. And I think Oregon's going to, especially now with the money coming behind it from Phil Knight, he's already said he's all in on making this a national championship contender every year. They're going to be the name at the top of high school recruiting, at the transfer portal. And Lanning's just a good recruiter in general.
Yes.
You've seen all the interviews going around, he's just a likable guy. So they're going to constantly be on this list. But when I looked at it, I thought 3 through 5 were pretty close. Miami was a couple of guys away on this from probably being in this 2 or 3 spot. You miss on Trevor Pena, who took a visit down there. He goes over to Penn State. but they get a nice back today from North Dakota State. He's one of the best teams in the FCS. He's actually an Omaha guy. They beat out Nebraska and Cal for him. But when I really looked at Texas Tech, they dominated this portal class. I mean, the way they went out and got those 3 offensive line pieces, they got a really nice safety addition on the back half, an FCS All-American. And it was just bits and pieces that kind of cost them games last year, but also they lost guys that won them games, right? Like they had a really good running back that's going to leave the program, and he won them that Iowa State game. They make that addition. All the offensive line, like who McGuire wants to be, and the way they've struggled is, one, your quarterback goes down, and Tyler Shuck 2 years ago when you were expected to win 10 games. And then they just kind of run into the injury bug. So adding not only maybe a starter, but these depth pieces from good players from other programs is going to be instrumental in Texas Tech actually performing the way they want to be. So I really like the acquisitions from McGuire over this portal. And I think all 5 teams on the list, nobody really surprised me. I mean, Ole Miss is always throwing money around, right? Like, especially at the transfer portal, Lane Kiffin wants to do that. But Miami, I mean, obviously Carson Beck's a part of their transfer portal class. I want to go back to LSU to wrap this conversation up on the transfer portal really quick, because I wanted to ask you this. Brian Kelly, he's kind of doing the Scott Frost thing where they haven't gone up to par of where they want to be as a program. Obviously much better than Scott Frost, to be very clear, but he does everything right in the offseason, it feels like. What is the amount of wins do you think LSU fans and college football fans think LSU has to reach to kind of keep the conversation off of he's just not the guy at LSU, because he's doing all the right things. So there must be something going on game day that's just not working. What do you think that number of wins is? X amount or less, he's back on the hot seat.
You know, knowing SEC fans and LSU fans and kind of how they operate, I think if it's 8-4, there's already rumblings. Like, do I agree with it? Maybe not.
Yeah.
But 8-4, I feel like is serious.
8 was my number.
7 is like, I feel like the whole world's talking about it type stuff. 9 is they're probably okay with it. They're like, okay, steady build, this kind of thing. And then, like you're saying, like 8's the number for real. What's their over under at? I'm trying to get that to load up here. My phone's not being
I thought it was 8.5. I mean, obviously that tells you a lot, but 8.5 or 9.5. It's one or the other. They always got the hook on there, but it's got to be one of those two. No way it's double digits with where they've been at the last couple of years. I would be stunned if it was 10.5. I would assume 8.5. I had 8 that number as well, because I thought about LSU fans. They have higher expectations. You remember how Coach O went out. They bring in Brian Kelly. It's supposed to be this saving grace. He's got more recruiting tools than he had at Notre Dame. He always had Notre Dame at the top of college football, even without being at a conference. And he really just hasn't been the most highly regarded guy for LSU fans. And they've still been good, but they haven't been where LSU wants to be, if that makes sense. 8.5. Yeah, so, I mean, us saying 8 is not groundbreaking news, but that's exactly right. I mean, at the end of the day, breaking news, Play the Fight song says Vegas got it right. Yeah. They never do that.
We're not breaking any news, but like if you go under your win total by half a game, like I feel like some programs will look at that and be like, oh, kind of a letdown. I feel like LSU and some of these other programs that are spending money would be very upset with it.
Oh, absolutely. Crash and burn style. Yes. I mean, Baton Rouge would be in shambles. I actually looked at tickets for that the other day, because we always like to take a Play the Fight song trip. Everybody in the comments should at Jake and yell at Jake all the time, because he's the one who makes it not happen. But I was looking at LSU's schedule. I got to get to a night game down there. I was not on the show where you guys talked about the one atmosphere you guys would want to go to before you die. I think LSU would be mine. LSU or Knoxville, and those tickets, man, astronomical down in the SEC. I was looking at Tennessee, Georgia, which is kind of middle of the conference season. I mean, you're talking about a band, $1,000 for a normal seat in that stadium for that game. So shout out to the SEC. That's where they got money rolling through there. But that is the transfer portal for this week. Had to break those down, give us some rankings. It's obviously a hot topic that will still have some landings, some late landings, and some accusations fly around, but we'll always break down the basic transfer portal news. Let's go on to the Big Ten. Tonight's show might be a little shorter. We only got 2 guys to share thoughts, but the Big Ten can roll a conversation for JP and I. JP representing the Iowa fandom, myself representing Nebraska. 2 teams with a lot of thoughts and expectations for their program. Let's lead it off with intriguing teams in the Big Ten this year. who intrigues you. Give me one or two names. Let's start off with one. Give me one program that intrigues you and why people should keep their eye on this Big Ten school in 2025.
Intriguing to me is the Michigan State Spartans. Now, I kind of look at what Jonathan Smith did last year in year one, and it was a team kind of felt without an identity. Sometimes they'd run the ball really well. Sometimes they played great defense. Other times it was turnover central, couldn't stop a soul. They lost a ton in that before he got there, technically, on the defensive line and all that depth. A lot of stars signed elsewhere. And I look at what Jonathan Smith's done in the past at Oregon State, and it was kind of reload and build. It was just a steady build with a lot of these guys. It was a very developmental program. Michigan State now has money that they can go get some guys and some higher star recruits, right, than an Oregon State was at the time. But they brought in 20 portal commits. And this, honestly, this kind of surprised me when I started diving into it. A lot of them are FCS guys or G5 guys. They weren't getting a ton of power conference guys transferred in there. And that tells me it's a lot on the fit. What do you see in a kid? Is he, got 2 or 3 years eligibility left? Is he ready to compete for a job now? Does he have a very high upside? He fits the culture and the program and what you're looking for. That's what that tells me going and getting 20 guys. Now you look at Aiden Childs at the quarterback position. Year 2 as a starter. Another year under Jonathan Smith. They have a really good receiver in Nick Marsh, who I think is going to be one of the better receivers in the Big Ten. Obviously a loaded Big Ten at the receiver position. And the defense is only going to get better because Oregon State always had a solid defense. I feel like Jonathan Smith's very good at making sure people are in place to succeed within his program. And so the defense wasn't bad, but that's a team with a history of usually having a good defense, or a school with a good defensive front and a decent linebacking core. And so I am very intrigued on what they do, because if this team goes 4-8, 5-7, how much different is it looked at? Like, are we looking at, I guess I'm curious on what Michigan State wants to be in the future. I assume they kind of sit in the same situation where they think they could compete to be a top 5 team in the program or in the conference every year. And are they going to act like a slow rise to that is a problem or an opportunity, I guess is what, are they going to really buy in after a couple years of tough? Or are they going to have a short leash for Jonathan Smith? And I think he's a guy that needs time to develop the program and get into itself. And so I wrote down Michigan State because that one we've talked about here in recent history within, our show. We talk about them every year, basically every Saturday in the fall. But before we get into preview season, there hadn't been that much buzz around Michigan State because, like I said, they're not landing massive portal additions, but they do have one of the more intriguing coaches and quarterbacks in the country again.
Yeah, we'll answer a lot of questions about Michigan State this year, too. I feel like every time we talked about him last year with Jonathan Smith's first year, it felt like, he just let Aiden Childs let the son of a gun rip a little bit. Like, he was throwing the ball 45 times a game, maybe threw 4 interceptions, but they never stopped throwing the ball. So was that a part of the offense, or was he just trying to install, we're just going to go after this thing in year 1 and see what happens? And they had some success, some shocking success against teams like a really good defensive team in Iowa. They put up a lot of points. So we'll kind of find out what Jonathan Smith really wants to do. Is that who he wants to be in the Spartan Green? God knows, but definitely a team to mention, and I like that pick. My first team that I had was maybe a team that you can't say is not they're not under the radar right now because they're going to be nationally ranked, probably top 15 to start the season. But team you got to break down and maybe tell the general consumer why this team, because if you looked at Illinois, you would be like, why is Illinois a top 15 team to start the year? It's Illinois, for God's sakes. Well, let's talk about why. This team, 9 returning starters on offense, including Luke Altmaier, who they get back. They return all 5 on the offensive line. All 5 of those guys have at least started 6 games or more in their college career. Maybe they kind of interchanged last year, which they did because of injury. But all 5 of them have started at least 6 games in college. And then on the defensive side, you have 7 guys returning, including Xavier Scott, including Matthew Bailey, who are 2 Sunday guys. And Brett Bielema just knows how to win in the Big Ten. I mean, this team competed in games last year that you probably forgot about. They competed on the road at Penn State. That game was way closer than the score even said. I mean, it came down to 1 or 2 plays. Penn State made a run in the college football playoff, folks. This team was that close. They had that many ranked wins. They went on the road in a tough environment, Lincoln, and won on a Friday night. Bielema just knows what he's doing. And they returned 16 guys, which actually led the Big Ten in returning starters. So, yeah, they're going to be at the top of the picture as they deserve to be. I actually think this is a team that could find themselves in Indianapolis at the end of the year that would absolutely rock and shock the college football world because of what Brett Bielema can do and what Luke Altmaier brought to that offense last year. You got to replace a couple of guys on the outside. Absolutely. You lose your top 2 targets, including Pat Bryant, who played about 1 million games in college. But I think they can do that, and they can set this offense up for success through the run game and through Altmaier's legs, that I think they're just going to be good. I mean, I'm looking at their schedule. Their Big Ten road games are, at Indiana is their first game. That's in week 4, by the way. Early college game day visit, I think, could happen there. That would be awesome. Illinois at Indiana, that's their probably toughest road game. Then they go on the road to West Lafayette and play Purdue, and then they go up to Seattle and play Washington. Those are their road games. And then they end the year at Camp Randall, but really, who's high on Wisconsin, right? Like, we'll already know what these teams are by the time they get there. It's a winnable schedule. They do play Ohio State at home, so you'll learn a lot there. And then they do go on the road and play at Duke week 2, which they always play kind of a tougher non-con game week 2. You'll learn a lot about this team, but I really think they're set up for success in 2025. What do you think on the Fighting Illini?
I think you're going to find out that the world is split on them. You'll see them in plenty of, top 15, top 10s early in the year or leading into the year. And then you'll see other people that are kind of like, oh, we've seen this story before, a team having a pretty darn good year, bring a lot of guys back, Oklahoma State, and then just fizzle the second year. But I don't think this team comparable to Oklahoma State. I think that Oklahoma State team from 23 would get beat by that Illinois team from 24 by 2 touchdowns. Like I just kind of see that being the difference. But yeah, I mean, you think you hit a lot of things on the head. It's not necessarily just because they return a lot of guys. It's also the style they play and not beating themselves. I think that, that plays into a lot. Oklahoma State came into the year with Alan Bowman at quarterback. I mean, come on.
Yes.
Like, it's a little different situation.
100% it's a different situation, but Illinois definitely a team to note, and we will cover them more thoroughly in our Big Ten preview, which preview season's right around the corner, so stay tuned for that. Your second team, did you have a second team for intriguing big teams to watch?
Yeah, I had Indiana here. Is this a flash in the pan, or is this a contender? You look at what Cignetti did last year, and it was a lot, they were in games, in their tougher games, obviously made the playoff and played a competitive one at Notre Dame after a rough start to that game. But it's different now that you don't have the kids you've already had built into your program. We saw like all the kids come over to him from James Madison. We saw him bring in pieces that were ready to work. A Rourke kid who fit that very well. Now it's a Fernando Mendoza from Cal. It's tough to do multiple times and flip a roster twice like he just did, especially at an Indiana. Like, it's not like they went and got some pretty talented guys along the offensive line at DB as well. But it's hard to do. And when you're in Indiana and you're not a Michigan, you're in Indiana, not a USC, it's tough to do. And so you have to find your place in the Big Ten. And how disappointed, would the fan base be if it was only 6-6 or 7-5? Like, I'm not really sure about that, but it's intriguing to me because it could be a second year slump, come back down to reality. And how is that handled, and how is Indiana looked at after, maybe that evens out and they go 7-5, 8-4 instead of 11-1? How is that looked at, perceived by the rest of the college football world, and especially the Big Ten? Where does that land this program? What in the rankings of all the programs within the Big Ten?
Yeah, we always talk forgotten transfers, and I think Fernando Mendoza is a guy that would pop up into a lot of people's mind, and people forget how important Curtis Rourke was in that offense and how well he fit into that scheme, like you mentioned. My first thought on Indiana is Mendoza of caliber? Because being, again, the cornballs we're watching Curtis Rourke at Ohio, who played above a really good Parker Navarro in that school and what they are as a program. Then he comes to Indiana, and all of a sudden, all these college football consumers are watching him in week 7 on the national spotlight. And they're like, he was at Ohio. Like, was he good there? They never had seen him before. I think Fernando Mendoza is kind of a similar guy as to where maybe he was not in a lot of spotlights outside of that one Miami game. But do you think he can fill the shoes to the caliber Rourke did? That would be my question to you.
It's a different quarterback. Like, they're not the same guy. They both can throw the ball well. I'd say Mendoza has maybe a bigger arm. but not as accurate. He moves around obviously a little bit better. So to say he's going to completely fill those shoes, is tough. And I think he may not have the same supporting cast around him either. And so I would say it's a little bit of a step down, but not enough for someone to tune in randomly on a Saturday and be like, woof, like this is the guy they got playing quarterback, or, oh, these guys not very good compared to what we had last year. I think you'll see differences, some pros and cons for sure, but not enough for somebody to grimace at it.
Indiana, definitely a team to follow. Great mention there. Let's take a break. Everybody, go ahead and type in your comment on this YouTube clip. Let us know who you think is an intriguing team in the Big Ten going into 2025. Maybe it's you disagree on the 3 teams we just mentioned, or you have a different one for different reasons. Comment that down below. This is your college football space as much as it is ours. My second and last intriguing team is definitely chalk. I'll put it up that way, but let's talk about why Oregon is an interesting team to follow. Obviously, the defending Big Ten champion. We talk about how good they did in the portal. But a lot of Oregon's success over the last few years, including their ending days in the Pac-12, came via the quarterback. And we are not getting that Dillon Gabriel 8 years of college football transfer in to fit into this scheme with all these weapons around him. We're getting a Dante Moore. So I think there's a little bit of a question mark next to Oregon this year on if they're going to be up to the offensive caliber they were last year and as consistent they were. But I think Oregon is one of the odds-on favorite, obviously, to make the playoff again, but it's because of their easy path to the college football playoff. Nobody's talking about the strength of Oregon's schedule because it's not really there. I mean, they avoided Michigan, they avoided Ohio State, they avoided an Illinois team I just talked up for 4 minutes, and their tougher games are going to be Indiana, which I don't think Oregon fans are going to be, terrified to go play Indiana in year 2 of Cignetti. And then they go on the road to Iowa City and on the road to Happy Valley. But let's say they even drop in Iowa City or in Happy Valley and they win the Indiana game. I mean, you're still looking at probably 11 wins on that schedule for that team, which is going to get them into the college football playoff. So It's an intriguing storyline to follow because there's so many question marks against the people they lost, including a Tez Johnson and names like that. But also, does it matter? Is it going to matter? Because their schedule is set up so much for success this year. They're almost a college football playoff pencil in. Remember me, and it's damn near ink. It's damn near pen. Early thoughts on Oregon. Where does the question mark lies at the quarterback position for you too?
I think it has to be the quarterback position, but at the same time, I think another question mark would be how do you continue the success or the growth, I should say, not the success, to continue the growth of the physicality, because we saw this team get more physical with an Ohio State in that game at home in Autzen, get physical with a Penn State team and, really control that defense, that Penn State defense, to do whatever they wanted to them. But can you do it throughout the year? Are you built for it continuously? And are you built to do it in the playoff game in a big stage? Because that's kind of been the knock on Oregon through all this time, is like you get to the bigger stage, you're not as physical, or you kind of get exposed for a different reason, or you just don't show up on that stage. I think that's the biggest question, is how does the Dan Lanning era progress? It can't stay the same. It kind of needs to move forward in some way. We've seen this steady rise. What's the next thing that this team is really going to get so much better at as a team and a program?
The physicality is a great mention, because if I think back last year about this time, we always talked about these teams coming into the Big Ten and how Oregon was the most physically ready to be capable of, competing deep into the season like they did. But then again, just like you mentioned, come the Rose Bowl, Ohio State was ready to go and just put belt to ass in that game, if you will. Yeah. So we'll see how they have a long-standing physicality, kind of like they did throughout the season this year, with a much easier schedule in my mind. Yeah. All right, that is it for intriguing team. Let's move on to a different topic. Let's go to headlines. Maybe teams that you maybe expect have a headline that people don't know about. This could be as far down as a Purdue or a school like Iowa. What do you think about a headline for the Big Ten season going into this next year?
Is Sherrone Moore the guy? Michigan has continued to recruit well. I don't think they've really fallen off much there from Harbaugh, but I still wonder if Sherrone Moore's the right guy for Michigan. I think people like him. He's a player's coach. They enjoy playing for him, but is he really the guy they need leading the charge there in Ann Arbor? So for me, the questions aren't just Bryce Underwood, which we saw him, shine a little bit and then make some bad plays in that spring game, but it's how do you now replace a lot of that defensive line that was back from the national title game? How do you replace a lot of those, basically the rest of the pieces from the secondary that helped them win a national title, then be a good defense again last year? Is there enough there that the depth was there and continue to grow and progress and get better and better in the shadows? Is that all ready to step up now, or are we missing some pieces? It's also a program who doesn't have a receiver core that's just terrifying to anybody. So I'm thinking, if they go 7-5, 6-6, our ears starting to perk up on hearing some things.
Do they beat Ohio State in that 7-5 and 6-6 is a big question.
If they do, they're probably fine, I think, as time has told us. But if not, I wonder if we start hearing the birds chirp a little bit.
I love that question because I had the same thought coming to mind. And I think the Ohio State thing's obviously a big contributor to that fan base and what they want to do. But Lord knows where Michigan's going to be this year. Obviously, Bryce Underwood is a tremendous athlete, and he showed some flashes in the spring game. But as a comment comes in from JT, who is a recurring host on the show, he probably could have been on the show tonight unless they're taking a family trip down there. Everyone assumed Michigan will be good with an improved quarterback, but is it too late after losing another great class to the draft? That's another fair question. This Michigan team, a lot of question marks around it, and a schedule that's going to give them opportunities early to show what they are as a program and how they will be throughout the season. So Michigan is a good one there. My headline was on the bottom half of the conference normally. It lies with PJ Fleck, a guy you love, a guy you've been compared to looks-wise.
Plenty of times.
But is PJ Fleck overachieving again in 2025? Because they did last year. I mean, this is a team that rolled into 2024 with a win total at 4.5. They end up winning 8 games. They beat USC. Like, they just kind of did this under the radar thing where they just won games that nobody really paid attention to because they were just in the middle of the pack in the Big Ten, but they were not expected to be at all. And with the schedule this year, I'm wondering almost if they can get to 8 or 9 if they have a couple of close big wins against programs maybe they were underdogs to, because the road schedule is brutal. They go on the road to Iowa City, they go on the road to Columbus and play Ohio State, and they go on the road to Eugene and play Oregon. So let's say we throw all 3 of those in at losses, especially with Iowa being a rivalry game that's pretty turned up there in Iowa City. But their preseason road game is Cal, who just had a max exodus on behalf of their program. So what the hell is Cal going to look like? I would expect Minnesota to be a favorite there. Don't get me wrong. Minnesota still has their question marks of, can they, refill Brosmer at the quarterback position because he was decent for them last year. How is the second year? Will there be a sophomore slump from one of the best true freshmen in the Big Ten and Kai? I forget his last name, but outstanding athlete on the back end for them. But I just like them to kind of start off 3 or 4-0 with their schedule. But then they roll into those conference games where I think they'll obviously lose the 3 I mentioned, but they get Nebraska at home. Can they win a game like that to get them over the hump? Because the win total is 4.5 last year. Now this year with that daunting road schedule is at 6.5. So Vegas is giving them a little bit more respect than they were last year. Can they get to 8 or 9 again? I think if they do, I mean, PJ Fleck's going to get himself a nice extension again because it's a team that's under the radar, but definitely a storyline and a headline to follow is, will he overachieve again in 2025? Brief thoughts on Minnesota, JP.
I think 9 gets an extension. I think 9 on certain schedules, if you're a Big Ten or SEC school, fights you for a shot to get into the playoff.
This schedule would do it.
I would agree. Schedule. You'd be in the conversation at 9-3, especially if one of those is an upset win against one of those teams, higher up in the rankings. 9-3 is getting you in the conversation. I'm not going to listen to Alabama or, some of those teams last year with 9-3 conversations. It was like, no, like this doesn't make any sense. You don't even look the part, for more than half your season. And so, 9 wins might get him another extension, honestly.
Yeah, and that's a lot. That's high praise coming from JP. He's not a PJ Fleck guy.
No, not a PJ
take
guy.
That, clip that, and keep that in your pocket, Minnesota fans. Any other intriguing headlines from you? Are we ready to move down the line?
No, that was it for me.
Okay, let's go to our teams. This is a little bit more of our focus. Obviously, Nebraska and Iowa are our teams. You can catch our week-to-week previews during the college football season live on our fan perspectives only on YouTube. So head over to the YouTube, but hit the subscribe button for all of those if you're an Iowa or Nebraska fan. And we appreciate you listening to this. Give me your thoughts on your team post-spring now. Both spring games have happened. where do you think you're at? Where does your fandom lie? High expectations? Are you nervous? And what are you nervous for heading into next season for the Iowa Hawkeyes, JP?
Pretty middle of the road expectations right now. I think 8-4 would be a pretty, I think that'd be right where I'd see them right now. It's a team that needed some help. It's a transition at quarterback. It's a transition in the defense. In the secondary, it's a transition at linebacker. You lose a lot of pieces. Obviously you lose K2 and Caleb Johnson. And the receiving core got better, but it wasn't, great last year. So my biggest question mark is pass catchers. You lose a Luke Lachey in the tight end room. Now it's Addison Ostringa and Zach Ortworth. Ostringa is going to be the main guy. Am I really confident in this group of tight ends? They're pretty solid blocking tight ends, as Iowa usually produces, but they're not going to be the higher end pass catchers you've seen from this position for the Hawks in the years past. Wide receiver wise, there's pieces there, but it's not anything, staggering. They went and got Sam Phillips, a UT Chattanooga transfer, who was a high-level FCS transfer using a season ago. Again, an FCS transfer, it has to fit and it has to mold. He's more of the body type you're looking for in Iowa City. Reese Vanderzee comes back after an injury that basically seemed like it was going to be a couple weeks, ended up being basically the rest of the season. He was flashing some greatness there in his size. Second year in the program, put a little meat on the bones, got some real jump to him. And then it's, Jacob Gill, Seth Anderson. They're good. They're role players, but it's a pass catching group that I feel like if this offense is going to take a step forward, and even this team as a whole needs to have some playmakers on the outside who can get open by themselves, not schemed open by themselves.
All right. I think that's a good place to leave Iowa. I mean, obviously one question that people are going to ask is, it's known as the quarterback graveyard. How do you feel like, the transfer quarterbacks they brought in, because they brought in multiple, which is more than normal for them. How imperative do you think that's going to be? Or do you think it's going to be that no matter what, that old style offense where running back would be more important than their quarterback and wide receivers?
Yeah, 3 new faces in that quarterback room this year with Hank Brown, and then obviously Gronowski coming in from South Dakota State. I think I'm comfortable there. I really do. From what I'm hearing and what I'm seeing, Hank Brown's look really good in the spring. He's not going to be the starter. It'll be Gronowski, but Hank Brown looks like he's in a good spot to win the job in 26. The running back room, that's probably outside of, I'd say, some pass rushing spots. I think that's where I'm most confident in this team. This is going to be a really good Iowa running back room with depth, a Jazz Patterson, a Kamari Moulton. There's some other pieces that are coming in that are good backs. So that's where I'm most confident at is running back. Not seeing Gronowski play in the spring obviously stinks. You're not going to get your real feel for him until fall camp. But that's kind of the situation that we're in, has surgery, got it done early enough to where he'll have a full fall. But, it's tough because you only get a year of Gronowski too. So I think Tim Lesser would like to build a guy. That's why they brought so many in that with so many years of eligibility left, because he wants to build a guy within his program and go from there.
All right. I think that's a good spot to think Iowa for, that 8-4. A lot of question marks around that program with the faces they lost on that defense. Jay Higgins, All-American linebackers. So they got some spots to replace. We'll see how they filled those throughout this season. On the Nebraska front, I think my biggest worry, or not, I shouldn't even say worry, but question mark around the team is, kind of the mass exodus the defense had, right? Tony White leaves to go to Florida State. He brings, the D-line coach and a lot of guys with him, including the transfer portal players and Jamari Butler. So you lost a lot on the defensive front. Ty Robinson, Nash Hutamaker, the way they held the middle down, right? They were really good in the Big Ten.
They were... So I think legit big dollar guys that if they would have left, they would have seen insane numbers, some of the best we've seen, Harmon when he went to A&M from Purdue, those kind of numbers, a Scorton or Harmon, Michigan State to A&M or Scorton, those two would have seen some crazy numbers, and they stayed, and they were worth every dollar they earned.
Yeah, huge in the middle for Nebraska. They'll have to replace those two spots. You do it with guys like Keona Davis, who's a 6'7" D lineman who they got back from, some transfer portal rumblings. You bring in guys. There's some young guys that I think will step up. Vincent Shavers Jr. was really good for Nebraska in the bowl game. I think he'll be a huge piece on the back end of that defense. And then the secondary, that's who moves in. I thought our secondary took a good jump forward last year from the year prior, but that's who moves into the defensive coordinator role. And John Butler, the former Buffalo Bills D-backs coach, They're going to stick with the same scheme, but there's a lot of young faces and a lot of question marks on how effective they're going to be, because Tony White's group was forming a top 15 group nationally both years. So if that defense is good again, then it can, enhance Matt Rule's third year, which is what everybody's expectations are. Obviously, on the offensive front, you're wondering what Dylan Raiola is going to be like in year two. It's a national story. He's got to step up and use the weapons that Matt Rule and co brought in for him, because they had a really good, it's probably the best wide receiver room I can remember going into the preseason in the last decade, probably. You steal Cortez Mills at the end of the at the end of the recruiting cycle. You got Dane Key from Kentucky, who was one of the better receivers in the SEC and led that Kentucky team who wasn't very good last year. But there's some new faces on the outside that could offer some great weapons. How about Ja'Cory Barney? This is a guy that not a lot of people talk about, as our boy GA comes in with the Nebraska comment. He thinks the run defense will take a step back, but the pass defense takes a step forward, which is fine by him. Yeah, that's fine. I think even the half step, if the run defense takes a step back, it's still serviceable enough to win football games, and the pass defense always can improve, because teams did sling it on us like in Indiana where they put up 56 points. But back to Ja'Cory Barney, the offensive side of things, this was an all Big Ten freshman for good reason, and he's kind of gotten lost in the room with all the transfer names and the young 4-stars and 5-stars that Nebraska brought in on the outside. But he's an elite guy, and if he can throw on a couple of pounds, he's going to be a force within the Big Ten and one of the better names that could probably be at an Ohio State. He's that caliber of player to be in a room of a wide receiver like that. So definitely a name to mention, but the worry for me lies on the defensive side, just to see how we fit and how we mesh under a new guy. But year 3 with Matt Rule, there's a lot of higher expectations throughout not only the fan base, but from everybody. They kind of gave those past two, Matt Rule goes 1-11, and then he goes 7-5, and then he goes 10-2 or 11-1. So can Nebraska fill the shoes of Matt Rule's third year? I think the thought in the room, from what I've heard from inside the program, is that it's college football playoff the year. I mean, God knows it's Nebraska. We won an off-season national title the last decade and haven't had a winning season until last year. Here we are again. What are your thoughts on Nebraska? I mean, obviously, it could be higher or lower, and lead us into our next question.
I mean, it's a pure build. And so it's how many steps up is this, right? Like, I feel like there's a goal there. We'd say the first year, maybe it was 2 steps up. The second year, maybe the wins weren't completely there. There were some obvious, downturns on random losses, but at 3 or 4 steps up. Now, is this going to be, a big jump, like a 10, or is this another 2 or 3, like it's one of those things that it's a team that, and it's a team that you can see early and be like, damn, that team's pretty darn good. And then later in the year, you kind of get a different team. And so putting that all together through an entire season will tell their entire story, because it's a team that should be taken seriously just about from everybody.
Yeah. 5-1 last year. It's a good point to make. 5-1 last year. And then they go on a stretch of 1-5, including a loss to UCLA, which is kind of that question mark, get bowl eligible for the first time in 8 years. So it's a good place to leave it, but a lot of questions on the Nebraska front. Appreciate GA in the comments. Recurring visitor. We love you, GA. Let's go to our last question before we get to our general thoughts or bold takes on the conference. Are there any teams out there you think could find themselves in Indianapolis that maybe the national spotlight's not on?
Tough question, because I feel like the top 3 or 4 of this conference is so ready to roll. It'll be really hard to knock them off. Right. But I honestly think if you get a good, I want to think that, but I'm not too sure.
I know. I was trying to pull a name too that I'm like, is Indiana shocking? Is Illinois shocking?
Not to us. I'm going to call Illinois not. I'll put them in that 4. I'll put them in with the Penn State, Ohio State, Oregon situation, where I don't think people would be that, shocked to see it. Maybe just brand recognition, not necessarily if you were paying attention throughout, the course of the year. But man, like, it'd be stunning to see like a USC there. Like, is that a good one?
Oh yeah,
like that's a big jump. And like they would come out of nowhere, and not nowhere, but it would be the first real. Like,
I mean, over under win total at 7.5. That's pretty nowhere to find yourself in Indy.
And they feel like even last year, like the win total to go down, they felt like they were moving in the right direction. So what if things continue moving in the right direction and the wins show up?
Yeah, that's USC is a fair one. I think mine was a team we just mentioned. If their coach is going to be on the hot seat, is Michigan. Can Michigan find themselves in Indy with the pieces they lost after the national title? And, you know, you go 6-6 and you look pretty good in a bowl game against Alabama. Can they take a gigantic step forward? Because a lot of their issues came from the quarterback position last year. They couldn't find which one they wanted to play. Orji couldn't throw a football and hit the broadside of a barn. Is Bryce Underwood the answer? I mean, you paid about every dollar in most people's pockets to get him. If he's the answer enough, can you go on the road and can you win? And can you have the offensive consistency to find yourself back in the top of the picture of the Big Ten again? Lord knows, but I think that would be a shocking name that wouldn't be shocking from where they won a national championship 2 years ago, but from the people's precious thoughts of a 6-6 season and a decent bowl game win, I think people forget they beat Alabama in that bowl game. Lord knows they could find themselves in Indy. So I think USC and Michigan are two good teams to drop there, and that's where I would leave it. Any other teams? Sure. Obviously, USC was kind of a pull for you, but any other teams you're like, you know, they could be there.
I don't do it. I don't think so. I
love. Yeah, you want to say it. It's Nebraska would be most people's thoughts. Nebraska would be most people's thoughts. If Matt Rule can put it together in his third year like he did at other programs, they would be a team that could float around that. But all right, that is where we'll leave that question. Obviously, very open-ended here. But let's wrap up the show tonight with our general thoughts on the Big Ten. Any bold takes, bold predictions, just thoughts on the way the conference will look in 2025.
I think the Big Ten's more loaded at the top than the SEC is right now. I'm about as confident in that as I've been in a couple takes. I think with an Illinois and Ohio State and Oregon and Penn State, I think all four of those are just there's question marks in them, obviously, but I think they are just as good as anybody in the country and a comparable top four to anybody else. Like throw me a Georgia, a Texas, if you want to throw Alabama in there, an LSU, whoever, give me your four from the SEC. I might take the Big Ten every single time.
Yeah, I think that's a good one. I mean, that's the common question, right? Big Ten versus SEC, especially in today's age of college football. Going back before I give my final thoughts to wrap up the show, good comment coming in here from CB. Nebraska finds a way to get past Michigan at home early. Then I think we see the breakout season the fan base has been waiting an eternity for. Yeah, I think that's a great game to kind of learn a lot about Nebraska, especially being at home. It feels like you got to get that one where Michigan was at last year.
The Michigan game this year is like the Illinois game last year?
Kind of. I think Illinois last year, not enough people. And I don't think the country knew the caliber Illinois was as a program. That was kind of just an extra second kicker of like, all right, maybe Illinois is for real.
I was so pumped for that game. Like, I can't remember a Big Ten Friday night game that I was that excited for. And like, I was pumped to watch that game because there were two teams I thought were pretty darn good. And they played like pretty. We said that in that recap.
It was a great football game.
Well, it was a great football game.
I walked out.
That was played to a T, played well on both sides. There was no stupid things that happened randomly. Like the game was played straight up and pure, and it was just an awesome football game where both teams played great and one team had to win.
Yeah, it was an unbelievable win for Illinois and kind of sparked the rest of that season and kind of the hype they're building into this year. I think that Michigan game, one thing I have to mention, both to CB and GA, what's up with the initials here from these guys? I love it. But CB and GA, my two Nebraska guys here, it seems like I have to watch that Michigan game. I'm a season ticket holder at every game with this chump, this Iowa fan at his bachelor party. It was between 2 weekends of, Houston Christian and Michigan. And I begged his entire group chat of Iowa fans to pick the Houston Christian week. I'll miss that game and be at the Michigan game. And I have to miss the Michigan game. So I will be with these chumps in a house watching Michigan and Nebraska. So I'll be screaming from 2 states up. So shout out to you guys. Hope you're in the stands for that game. That is going to be a pivotal game in Nebraska's success for the season. So great comment. Come on back with some CB. My final thoughts on the Big Ten this year is what the hell is it going to be? With we mentioned all the question marks, right? Oregon, the quarterback position, you got to fill it. But I feel like last year we had such a clearer picture of things because we were like, all right, Oregon's going to come in. They're going to be physical. It feels like they're ready for the Big Ten. Ohio State spent $30 million. They're going to be good, probably win the national title. Look what happened. I don't think we have that standout this year out of the Big Ten. I don't like Oregon's going to be good. Ohio State's probably going to be good. They just won the national title, but how are they going to fit? Is Michigan going to be good again? So there's so many question marks if Illinois is going to pan out. What the hell is this going to look like at the end of the year? Are we kind of blowing smoke up everybody's ass talking about all these teams of Illinois and Indiana, and then we're just going to get an Oregon run back to back? Lord knows, but the quarterback position is obviously very important at that. And there's a question mark there. I don't think we have a clear-cut picture for the Big Ten like we did last year of Oregon's ready. They're talented. They got a lot of money. Mm-hmm. Ohio State spent all this money. Michigan's going to take a gigantic step back, which we knew. And we don't have those pictures of these teams because of all the pieces all the top teams lost. So who's going to take the step forward? Who's going to be in the top of the conference this year? I don't know. So I just think it's a messy picture, but it's going to be a lot of fun. And whoever wins the conference is obviously going to be very competitive in the college football playoff and probably make a run at the son of a gun again, because the last two national champions, hate to break it to you SEC fans, came from the Big Ten. We'll see if 2025 can repeat it. But that's all of our thoughts on the Big Ten Conference from this upcoming season. We'll break it down further and break down team-by-team previews in our Big Ten preview upcoming here. Probably July is probably a good time. Yeah, July definitely is when it will be. So check that out then. But we wanted to just be in the Big Ten, guys. We had to talk about it tonight. Any closing thoughts before we close the tonight's show, JP?
Stickers, man, they're cool. I mean, I'm so pumped with those things. Like, they turned out so much better than even we could have imagined.
Yep.
So check those out.
The PTFS, Play the Fight Song, support a small-time show. The people who love college football out of the Midwest, support a Nebraska fan, support an Iowa fan. Hit us in our DMs. We'll ship them out to you. ShopNoRivals.com, our great presenting sponsor. Use the code PTFS for free shipping on all of your awesome new hats. Check them out at ShopNoRivals.com today. We love you. We'll see you next time. Next week, Jake will be back in the studio, and we'll talk college football all the time. JP, take us away.
Appreciate everybody tuning in. All love. Play it.